You're not entering the workplace as this empty vacuum. There are already leaders there, either on the side of management or they're on the side of other workers fighting to improve their workplace.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
We are joined by Izaak Standridge. He is a member of the Alabama Professional Staff Organization, and what we are doing with this show is we're talking to several people from several panels, from several workshops, from the Labor Notes Alabama Troublemaker School that is happening right now as this is airing, and we're doing that so that we can kind of give people a taste of what they're missing, give people, some helpful information. And so we wanted to talk to Izaak about one of the workshops that he is leading with Luis Leon about titled Assembling Your Dream Team. Izaak, thanks for taking the time with us this afternoon. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. It's good to be with you. And we've been working on getting this Alabama Troublemaker School going for the past several months. I've enjoyed that process and know that this training is going to be really good.
I think it will. There are several really good workshops, really good panelists, and like Joe DeManuel Hall emphasized last week on the show, I think the important thing is, and this is something that you mentioned, is the popular education aspect, the ability to learn from one another, whether or not you're actually quote unquote leading a panel or facilitating a workshop. The ability to learn from fellow attendees and to network and to build relationships and stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to that aspect of the thing as well. So your panel is titled Assembling Your Dream Team. So talk to us about that. What are we going to be learning in your workshop?
Great. So yeah, Assembling Your Dream Team actually comes out of the hallmark training that Labor Notes is known for. It's called Secrets of a Successful Organizer. Assembling Your Dream Team is the second unit of that training. So it all comes out of this textbook, Secrets of a Successful Organizer. And Assembling Your Dream Team, like you said, it's about popular education. I'm not an expert in the room. I can share stories of organizing experiences that I've had, and everyone else in the room can share the same. This particular training is broken up into two major sections. The first section will be kind of exploring why leaders are important, who the leaders are, what it means to be a leader. And then the second half will be, how is your workplace already organized, right? And mapping kind of those organizational structures that already exist in your workplace, identifying the leaders that already exist in your workplace, even if they, don't have a title or position or anything like that. We'll talk about natural leaders that exist in your workplace, within your unions, or if you don't yet have a union that already exists there. So no, when you're organizing, no one's ever starting at level 0. There already exists an organizational structure. There already exists a way of workers relating to one another. So in this workshop, we'll be exploring that deeper.
And we're actually going to be able to get Luis on the line here shortly. He just texted me and said that he's going to be able to join to talk to us about this as well. But let's start with, you said that your workplace is already organized. Your workplace is already organized. So what do you mean by that? What does Labor Notes mean when they say that? What do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, so there's two kind of ways to think about it that we'll kind of go over in this training. One way is to think about the work order. How is your workplace already structured? What is the order that already exists, right? So an easy way to think about this is, does your workplace have different departments? Does it have different grade levels? Like if you're in a school system, does it have different department, different shifts, right? Are you on first shift, second shift, third shift? So there's already a structure in place that groups people into these teams or working collaborative groups that work in close contact with each other. So that's the work order that already exists. And in most places, that work order has been designed by the employer or the boss, right? But it does exist. So how do we work within that structure that currently exists? And then the second way to think about it is what's the social order of your workplace? What are the social relationships that exist there? Are people related to one another? Do they have family that works there? Do they have people that they go to attend places of worship with together? Do people carpool? So just kind of identifying those social relationships that already exist and working from there as well. And that's particularly important when we think about questions of why do we need leaders, right? Or what is a leader? So one of the common responses you'll get when you ask someone who a leader is or what a leader is, they may identify people in positions of leadership and say they're a leader, right? Or they may identify, there's lots of books about how to be a leader, right? Stephen Covey, those kind of things, right? But that's not exactly what we're talking about here. For the purpose of labor notes, we begin to think about all the different aspects of a leader and just really come away with one key idea. And that key idea is that leaders have followers. And if you don't have a follower, if there aren't followers, then there may not be a leader. But there are leaders in your workplace already. They already have people that they can call on, that they have these social relationships with.
And, so there were a couple good things there that are important to touch on, I think. And one of those things, as we welcome Louise, maybe we can just go ahead and jump and get him to answer a question just right off the bat, just throw him into the deep end.
Good. Thanks, Jacob.
Yeah, absolutely. Love putting people on the spot. So, we've been talking, Louise, about, we've been talking for a couple of minutes already about the training and how your workplace is already organized. And he was going through basically how your workplace is already organized. There are different departments. There are, different sections of the workplace physically and socially. And there's also social relationships that can or cannot be used by the boss or by your coworkers. And so, the question that I was going to ask Izaak, and now I'll ask you, is why is it important to understand how your workplace is organized already?
Right. So, do you want me to take that, Izaak, and then you can chime in?
Yeah, go ahead. I was just talking about the work order and then the social order.
Right.
And how to grow from that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one reason why it's important to think about how our workplaces are already organized is because sometimes in organizing, we think about someone is coming out from the outside, they're organizing the workers. It's like, there's no organization here. We have to build it. So the idea is, I think, a respect for the agency of the people that we're working with to improve our workplaces, that they already have set up a way to undermine the boss, to make it possible to exist in an exploitative workplace. So the notion that your workplace is already organized is like, how do you tap into that network of resistance that already exists in your workplace? And it may not be obvious, that network is already there. It could be, who are the people that you go to if you want to get something done? Who has a good relationship with a supervisor that plays favoritism, right? So that's someone that you want to be aware of in case they're on the side of management and are going to snitch on you once you start organizing. So the idea is that you're not entering the workplace as this empty vacuum that you're going to fill in with leaders. There are already leaders there. Those leaders are either on the side of management or they're on the side of other workers fighting to improve their workplace. Our task is to identify what those dynamics are so that we can play offense when it's necessary, or we can, play defense when it's necessary. So that's just information that will help us build a strong committee of workers. So that's my sense of it. But I'm curious what you think, Isaac, in your experience.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And this training is it's the second step after beating apathy, right? So what we learn in that is that there are issues and concerns that everybody has, right? Or things that people care about. They may not call them an issue yet or anything like that, but there's things that people care about. And only through understanding those relationships can you find out what people care about, right? So if we start with the structure that already exists and work with those relationships that already exist, then we may be able to find out as we progress forward. So one thing that I often think about is you may not be the person in your workplace that's going to win over another person, right? So you have to identify the relationships that already connect that person, and they may be able to win them over in ways that you just can't.
Right. That's a great point. I totally agree with that. I think it's knowing, like having the humility to know I'm not the leader of this group of people, right? There are multiple leaders in our workplaces, and some folks will identify with us and listen to us when we speak. But at Labor Notes, we like to say that a leader is someone who has followers. It's a very simple understanding of leadership. And sometimes it kind of goes against our culture, where we glamorize people that are eloquent, or we glamorize the loudmouths. But in reality, what we want is people that can move their coworkers to take action. So I was just on a call before jumping onto this interview with a worker at Amazon in California. And this worker was a learning ambassador. And he was describing to me the process of how he came to become disillusioned with Amazon and became a militant in his workplace, fighting for change. And as a learning ambassador, he was training other workers on how to do their jobs. And he felt like he was being dishonest and selling them lies in his current role. And for me, someone like that, he came across as a very charismatic person, as someone that was funny, that workers could identify with. Like, I had fun just talking to him as an interviewer. So that's not always the case in interviews. So the secret is out. Like sometimes people are very shy, and they just are not comfortable, or they're just giving you canned lines about things. But it's always great when you have an interview and people just open up. So this person really opened up and shared some really good stuff that I hope to include in an article. And so my thought was, as I was listening to him, I'm like, wow, this is someone that when he flipped over and became disillusioned with Amazon and began organizing, he already had a network of people that looked up to him because he had trained them, right? And we saw that dynamic with Chris Smalls in Staten Island, Derek Palmer. These were people that had been at the facility for a long time, had helped other workers out when they were learning the ropes. And because of those relationships, they were able to mobilize them once they started trying to build a union. So I think that's key.
So, as you're talking about the workplace is already organized, and how do we recognize leaders? Why is it important to, it's important to recognize leaders basically so that we can get them on the committee, right? Like we want to bring them and then their followers onto an organizing committee so that they can begin leading with me in my workplace, with, as a rank and file worker, with the listener in their workplace. And so how do you have conversations? So, you've checked out the landscape. You've recognized, you've looked at how the workplace is organized. You see, you recognize the titles maybe that people have, training ambassador, but also you recognize the actual, like, who is actually having leaders. You can be a learning ambassador or this or that, or a team lead, without having actually people respect you. And that's something that I think that people will really take away. One of the things that I remember, and I can't remember if this was from a organizer training with Labor Notes or with the IWW, but it's always stuck with me. How do you recognize a leader? You pose a question to a rank and file worker and see who they go to get the answer. And that's a good way to get to see who that worker thinks is a leader. Who do they trust to fix a problem for them? Who do they trust to fix a problem for them? And a lot of times that's not going to be their supervisor. A lot of times that's going to be an experienced coworker. And that is somebody that is very important to have on the campaign. And so how do you begin having these conversations with these people that you have identified as leaders to bring them into the campaign? And I guess, Luis, since you've been talking a little while, so Isaac, what are your how would you go about answering that?
Yeah, there's a couple things to kind of draw out here. So I'll just start with one, getting back to kind of assembling your dream team. One of the first exercises we'll do is a scenario, this is a popular education, so we'll be brainstorming together with everyone that's there. But imagine a scenario where the person you think is the leader, right? They may be the steward, they may be the local president, someone that you think is the leader now in your workplace. And what happens if you walk in one day and they're fired, right? They're no longer there. How are you going to get the rest of your colleagues together quickly to begin a campaign, right? So, if we talk about just sending an email, who are we not reaching just by sending an email, right? So as we begin to identify these leaders, we'll begin to develop these networks of getting information and other people on board so that we can do things quickly, right? So we're thinking of leaders just beyond one person, a centralized leadership into multiple people. And that's to your second point about, forming committees and groups like that. And I'll let Louis speak to that.
No, I agree with that, Isaac. I think that's right on. I think a slight disagreement with what like Jacob mentioned is like it's like there isn't like one leader, right, that you're going to identify as going to solve your problem. I think one of the things that we try to disabuse people of when they come to the Labor Notes trainings is this idea. Like we ask people, who does the work in your union, right? Or how many people would you say do the work in your union? Usually, people would say one person, right? And the idea is that we want like a union that's mobilized to take action, that has many leaders, that is leaderful, right? So that's, I think sometimes workers also have this mindset of like, if I have a problem, who do I go to solve it? And it's like, you're looking at like a service model where it's like, I'm going to file away like a complaint and some other person's going to take care of it. So I think we try to put out like a different framework about leadership and about how do we solve problems in our union. So I think what Isaac shared was like right on.
Yeah, and to your point, Jacob, there are different strategies of ways to identify the natural leaders in your workplace, right? And we'll go into that some about, you mentioned, who do people go to for if a problem arises. But yeah, so leaders aren't always the loudest in the room. They aren't always the most aggressive or the most courageous. At the very beginning of the call, I mentioned that the crux of it, or the main highlight that we like to take away from when we think about leaders, is who do they have followers, right? Leaders have followers. And so identifying those people that have followers becomes key in any work that's going to take place from there.
Right, right. And the I definitely agree with what Luis said, and the illustration that I said about who do people. This was in the context that way of identifying leaders was presented in the context of we are organizing a workplace, and how are we going to get an organizing committee? Not necessarily, who do we go to for problems in a union workplace, and that's going to be the leader, and that's the only person that we talk to. But because that it is very important to have the membership be involved and active. In when we're addressing issues and stuff. So, what are some other ways, Isaac, that you think are that you're going to talk about in this training of identifying leaders?
Yeah. So, just thinking through scenarios, if you attend a staff meeting, right? Everybody can probably visualize this as they think through it. When you're attending a staff meeting, there are going to be some of your colleagues that get up and talk. Some colleagues you're going to cringe and say, oh, they're just talking again. And you're going to begin to tune them out, right? But then there's some leaders that when they get up to speak, people are listening, people are watching, they're agreeing, they're nodding their heads. So that's another strategy of thinking about who the leaders are in the workplace. And, and there's other ones, right? Who, if someone's having a baby shower, who's the one that gets the information around to come to the baby shower, right? What are the networks that already exist, right? So it goes beyond just putting things in people's mailboxes. It goes beyond just emails, and it goes to actually talking to your colleagues. Any other thoughts, Luis?
And so, if we're able to, look at the way that the workplace is structured and identify leaders, the workshop is titled "Assembling Your Dream Team." What are some other things to think about as you are putting together your workplace committee? And Luis, we can throw that to you.
Yeah, I think being flexible. I think Isaac ended on having conversations with people, right? So when we are trying to identify our leaders, we're trying to identify what do people care about? What are they willing to take action on? Because it's a deeply felt concern that they have. So I feel like we have to have some flexibility that someone who may have been anti-union can change and become pro-union. So sometimes we try to set like a hard and fast rule. Like we at Labor Note sometimes point to our bullseye and say, where do people fall in this bullseye, right? So if you were to point people, where are your organizers, your supporters, your hostiles, who's in your core committee? I think those are not set in stone. People move between those concentric circles. Our task as organizers is to move people closer to the core. So that means that in some campaigns, this doesn't always happen. You could have someone that's in the hostile campaign, and they might be hostile not because they hate the union, but because they hate you as a person. So that means that you're not the right person to move that person, but maybe somebody else is who has a better relationship. So I think when you're assembling your dream team, it's important to not write people off. You want to give people at least 3 chances, right? You doesn't mean that you're naive, that you invite them to the core meeting after they've told you how much they hate unions, but it means that you keep chipping away and talking to them. And you'll never know, management will do something to them where they will flip. So one concrete example is the woman that I interviewed for a piece I wrote for the Real News about a campaign at Refresco, a beverage bottler in New Jersey. They had to go for an election twice. And during the first election, this woman voted against the union. But the second time, because of some issue with her her bereavement leave, she was upset with management and kind of went over and said, you know what, I'm going to screw you by joining the union. So, so don't underestimate people's pettiness and anger, right? Like that can work towards you, towards your goals, I should say.
For sure. And one of the oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, that made me, recount a story of, early on when I was organizing and thinking through organizing, I was working with a more veteran organizer and interviewing workers at a shop that was organizing. And there was this one woman that he approached, and she was like, "Get away from me. I don't want to talk to you. Leave me alone." And in my mind, as a beginning organizer, I was thinking, well, let's put that person down as hostile. And he goes, "No, I'm going to put him down as a maybe." And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And he said, "Well, we don't know anything about her. We just know she didn't want to talk to us." Right? So it's easy to kind of dismiss people at first glance. But yeah, I love that point about give them 3 tries.
And one of the things that I wanted to emphasize as far as when you're assembling your dream team, your workplace committee, is the importance of diversity in many in as many ways as you can. I think a very, very, very important way is if you're in a workplace that has a lot of pretty defined departments, then you're going to want to make sure that you've got people from each of those departments, right? If you're in a restaurant and your committee is only made of front of the house workers, it's only made of servers and hostesses, then the back of the house staff is not going to feel very represented by your union, and vice versa. Same is true. So it's important to try to find leaders in each department, in each section of the workplace that you're wanting to represent, ideally, and then also, there is the importance of demographic diversity as well, because you want people to feel represented on the on the committee. When they look at the committee, it would be very easy for rank and file workers that are not this to look at a committee of old white men and say, this union doesn't represent me. And so it's important to try to make sure that the workplace committee is representative of the workplace that it's representing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that will come out when you get into the social networks, right? Mm-hmm. If people speak the same language, have different backgrounds, then there may be a way to connect with them through that. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, Luis, Isaac, I think that we have got a pretty good taste of what people are going to be getting from this workshop. I appreciate both of y'all's time. Is there anything that either of y'all want to make sure that we hit before we wrap here?
There is one thing I want to highlight. In case no one else you talk to today, any union, any work group can contact Labor Notes, and they'll actually, work with you on developing a training, right? So I had experience of this when I was in San Antonio. We invited some Labor Note trainers out to San Antonio and did a whole workshop with our local union there, and went through secrets of a successful organizer. So just because you couldn't attend today, it doesn't mean that this resource is no longer available to you.
I didn't pay Isaac to say that, but that was perfect.
That's great. Yeah, and I definitely want to second that. That's I've been to one of their trainings before. It was great. Really enjoyed it. And if you're not able to come on Saturday, on today when you're listening to this, then you can definitely reach out to them. labornotes.org. Luis, anything?
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right. Luis, Isaac, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.